Excellent. So, as I said, welcome everyone. We have three excellent presentations today. I'm really excited. So, without further ado, we're going to kick off and we're going to start with Sam. Sam, if you want to come and introduce yourself, and yeah, off you go.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm just going to share my screen so you can see my slides. Is that working for everyone?
Yeah, I can see that.
Working brilliant. All right, I'll start up. Well, hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name's Sam Tewari. So I'm currently an organizational psychology student at Birkbeck at the University of London. Recently graduated from the University of Greenwich, where I was doing the psychology conversion masters, and that's where I carried out the research project that I'm going to be talking to you about today. So that research project in question, so that was looking at psychological capital and its impact on engagement and eudaimonic well-being for remote workers during the COVID-19 pandemic. So to give you a bit of background and a deeper dive, so those constructs that I've just been talking about there, so work engagement, so that's characterized by high levels of energy and a strong identification absorption in one's work, born out of the positive psychology movement, and it's conceptually thought to be the opposite of burnout. The research up to that point had suggested that engagement and remote working are positively related. Eudaimonic well-being. So this is the perspective of well-being that is associated with individual flourishing and the fulfillment of one's potential. So more about personal growth than, say, the hedonic perspective, which is, i.e. hedonism, which is more associated with the minimization of pain and the pursuit of pleasure. So the research around remote working and well-being suggested that remote working was linked to job satisfaction, organizational commitment levels, positive emotions, and reduced emotional exhaustion. However, there were negative impacts of remote working on well-being, such as blurred work and home boundaries, overworking, and social and professional isolation. Psychological capital. So this is a core set of positive psychological resources that can be measured, developed, and managed over time in order to gain a competitive advantage. So these four resources are self-efficacy, optimism, hope, and resilience. And the research has suggested that the possession of psychological capital resources was linked to increased organizational commitment, job satisfaction, engagement, job performance, subjective well-being, and decreased stress and absenteeism. Within the context of remote working specifically, up to that point, the researchers suggest that psychological capital was linked to higher working engagement for remote workers, autonomy, and low levels of burnout and perceived task ambiguity. So what I really wanted to do here was take because I was carrying out this research right in the middle of the pandemic. I started the course in the first year in person, and then it all moved online as we adapted to what was going on in the world. So I wanted to understand whether the research around these constructs was still relevant within this weird context that we'd currently found ourselves in, and how we can use this research to move forward into a new normal and help employees to thrive. So the research gaps I was trying to fill, so the relationship between psychological capital and eudaimonic well-being perspective was fairly limited, and psychological capital and remote working, especially in the context of the pandemic. So the methods that I used for this study, it was a Qualtrics survey. There was 189 people in total in the final sample after data cleaning, and this was made up of two samples. The first one was via social media, so I posted a video of me talking about it on my Instagram. I also posted about it on LinkedIn and allowed people to snowball this throughout their own networks as well. So I had the social media sample, and I also had an Amazon MTurk sample as well. So as I said, after data cleaning, this left me with 189 entries to study. The survey itself, so this looked at demographics, so age, gender, job title, the industry they were working in. So these were all people who were currently employed during the pandemic. It looked at their working arrangements. So did they have any care responsibilities during the pandemic? I.e., were they looking after elderly relatives? Were they homeschooling children, etc.? Did they have adequate IT support from their companies? And did they have a home office environment, or were they working from their bedroom, for example? And then I used established scales to measure eudaimonic wellbeing, work engagement, and psychological capital. So the results suggested, I'll just minimize that, that there was a positive correlation between engagement and eudaimonic wellbeing. So those who scored highly in one scored highly in the other, and vice versa. Also showed that psychological capital resources had a highly significant positive effect on both of those outcomes, even after controlling for other pandemic-related variables. So I was very pleased with this. Call it beginner's luck if you like. And then a couple of the themes that popped up. So firstly, within IT support, psychological capital had a mediation effect on both engagement and eudaimonic well-being. So this was interesting because it was kind of a causality thing. So the provision of good technological support from the person's company in turn led to their perceptions of them having these resources, i.e. self-efficacy, optimism, hope, and feelings of resilience. And this in turn led to the positive outcomes of engagement and eudaimonic well-being. So really suggested that having that foundation of good technological support during the pandemic for remote workers was important. Interestingly, psychological capital also played a moderating role between IT support and eudaimonic well-being. So this was interesting because it suggested that for people who scored highly in psychological capital resources, they were better able to utilize that technological support and reap the benefits in terms of their eudaimonic well-being. Whereas those who scored lower in psychological capital didn't seem to receive that same effect. Another theme that popped out was family care responsibilities. So this showed that psychological capital played a moderating role between the, family care responsibilities and its impact on eudaimonic well-being. So I thought this was really interesting because what this suggested was that for people who scored highly in the psychological capital, they perceived a higher number of care responsibilities during the pandemic. So looking after relatives or children. They saw this as a source of meaning and purpose in their lives, and this had a positive impact on their eudaimonic well-being. Whereas for people who scored lower in psychological capital, this suggests, they may have perceived it as more of a burden. So I thought this was really, really interesting. So the general implications of the study. So this was one of the first studies to explore all of these constructs in relation to remote working during the pandemic. Researchers needed to identify the ways that employees can adapt and thrive in this new normal world of work that we are living in. The study showed that psychological capital resources are effective in buffering the impact of the pandemic on employee engagement and eudaimonic well-being levels. The study highlighted the importance of providing good IT support in order to maintain engagement and eudaimonic well-being in employees whilst working from home during the pandemic. And it highlights the benefits of developing PsyCap resources through evidence-based interventions, such as training workshops. And this was really key because psychological capital is, they are resources that we can develop and train within people to improve and then in turn reap the positive benefits that we found in this study. So that brings me to the end of my presentation, and I look forward to welcoming any questions. So thank you for listening.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Sam. That was really, really interesting. Has anyone got any questions? Feel free to either put them in the chat or come on the microphone and verbally ask us your question. Could be a reflection also. I have a question. Well, I'll leave people to think. You said that you're sort of carrying out another dissertation at the moment. There might be others on the call who are similarly sort of coming up to carrying out their own dissertations. Is there anything that you wish you'd known back at the start of sort of your piece of research there, that you're now putting into place as you're sort of carrying out your next version?
Wow, that is a good question. Wish I had time to reflect on that. But there's certain tips and tricks. Like, I think it was very daunting, especially when it came to collecting samples of data in this instance. But what I have recommended to people within my class is, especially if you're doing a Qualtrics survey, use Amazon MTurk. It's brilliant. And it doesn't cost that much. You don't have to put that much behind it financially to get an amazing sample of people. And I found that really useful for that particular segment of my my sample. So that's a little life hack, maybe.
That's definitely helpful. It's not actually something that I've ever heard of before. So yeah, definitely helpful. Anyone else have any questions or reflections? Perhaps they've come across something similar at work themselves or within organizations. Must be that almost bank holiday feeling. If not, or if you think of something shortly, please do put it in the chat and we can circle back to it. Sam, are you happy for people to reach out to you on LinkedIn if they think of any questions at a later date?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want me to post my details in the chat?
Yeah, if possible. And I mean, everyone else, please feel free to also post your LinkedIn details if you'd like to network and connect with anyone else on the call today.
Thanks, Louise. I'll post that now.
Thank you so much, Sam. Excellent. Okay, so next up, we have a presentation from Vani. Vani, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Yeah. Thank you.
The floor is yours.
Let me share my screen, please. Can you see? Can you see, Louise? Oh,
not at the moment.
Right. There we go.
We can see your screen now.
Okay, can you see this now?
Yes, perfect. We can just see your slide.
Excellent. You can see my slides or just my notes as well?
Just your slide.
Okay, brilliant. Hello all, good evening. My name is Vani Athithan. I have recently completed my MSc in organizational psychology with Birkbeck. As part of it, I conducted a research and submitted this dissertation. My research focused on how ethnic minority women perceive psychological safety within their work teams. Before I go on and talk about the research aims, I'd like to give you a bit of context, why I chose this topic out of all other relevant topics. When the concept of psychological safety was introduced in the program, I was fascinated by it. The definition claims it is a shared belief among the team members that their work team is a safe place, so they can freely express their voice, their concerns, raise their voice, even own up to mistakes without any worries. Because it's a safe place, the other team members will not judge them, but will give them the benefit of the doubt. So as a woman of color, this was a fascinating topic for me. And I realized how I perceive my perceptions actually guide me on how I think and act in my workplace. So I was curious how other people in similar shoes think and act in their workplaces. So I decided to do my dissertation on this topic, and I focused on ethnic minority women because it was relevant to me. When I started searching for research papers, I realized in the organizational domain and in psychological safety studies, there were not many research papers available that focus on minority groups, especially ethnic minority groups. So I decided to set my research in the intersectionality prism and look psychological safety through Crenshaw's intersectionality framework. This framework claims that social categories such as age, race, ethnicity, gender, sexuality, ability, etc., creates groups and segregations in society. Based on the group membership, individuals either granted privileges or suffer disadvantages. If individuals are members to more than one marginalized groups, they suffer multiple folds of disadvantages simultaneously. So I decided to focus on how ethnic minority women's ethnic and gender identities impact their perception of psychological safety within their work teams. And I recruited 11 participants. They were professional Asian women from UK's private, public, and third sectors. I used semi-structured interviews to gather data and used reflexive thematic, Brown and Clark's reflexive thematic analysis to analyze the data. Reflexive thematic analysis gave me the freedom to walk closer to the data, explore and analyze it, and try to understand the nuances and intricacies. It equally set me a framework so I could self-reflect on each and every stage, so I could avoid my preconceptions, my existing knowledge, and biases not contaminating the data. Based on the findings, I constructed 4 themes. The first one was being the other. It was particularly a dominant theme. Individuals were aware of their ethnic otherness and mentioned they were impacted by it throughout their employment. They somewhat accepted there was a stigma attached to that, and they mentioned they have to deal with it and overcome that. One participant mentioned they had to play the card right to blend in or to be accepted by the other colleagues. Another participant mentioned they have to protect themselves. In my literature review, I noted similar findings from other scholars, specifically Herrick. They noted marginalized groups feel they were relatively powerless and have lower status. To deal with that, they follow assimilation tactics, such as changing their accent or dress code to be blended in or to be accepted. However, this put immense pressure on them. In the workplace, the ethnic otherness manifested as scrutiny and suspicion towards them. It was noted in Puer's seminal work in her Bodies Out of Place framework. She noted when non-dominant group members move into job roles that were historically reserved for Westerners, these unusual occupants were subjected to scrutiny, suspicion, and hypervigilance from the dominant group members. My second theme was unable to present the authentic self. Participants mentioned they were expected to work hard. However, if they propose something or try to stand up for themselves, it usually resulted in backlash and subtle punishments, such as silent treatments or disregarding participants' knowledge and skills. After suffering episodes of this, they eventually stopped talking or voice their concerns or opinions freely. Incidentally, these are the fundamentals of psychological safety. So if we see the obstacles women face in their workplaces as glass ceiling, for minority ethnic women, this glass ceiling seems to be double glazed. For example, usually or in general, as showing assertiveness and dominance seems as leadership qualities. Asian women's stereotypes see them as non-dominant and submissive. So denying these women to show these traits at the same time, disregarding them from leadership positions is more or less like forcing these women into straitjackets and expect them to swim the Atlantic. That's not going to happen, is it? The third theme was the team can make or break. Participants mentioned their perceptions hugely shaped by the team environment. Team environment means their line manager and the colleagues. The minority group members generally prefer diverse work environments. Equally, a supportive line manager could provide a safe team work environment for them so they could enjoy their job roles. Participants also mentioned they highly valued colleague support and allyship. Colleague support helped them to overcome the workplace difficulties. It was observable. The participants mentioned the allyship helped them, but in reality, when participants voiced their concerns for issues that directly affect them, a pin drop silence was the response from the colleagues. However, some colleagues approached them in private and offered comforting words. The fourth theme was participants' strategies to cope and navigate the work environment. In general, they believe they have to work hard to win approval because they belong to these minority groups. First, they have to work and prove themselves. So these subtle barriers faced by participants were not addressed or in general, not addressed or asked by the organizations. Participants were resilient, and usually their resilience came from their upbringing or their work experience. When they were in a job role for years, they learned to trust their ability and skills, and the resilience came from there. Sometimes participants decided to withdraw themselves from the work environment to protect themselves from the emotional harm. Or they try to move to lower positions. So these are some of the things they said. These are the findings. So in general, participants were aware of their ethnic otherness. They also said they didn't have the freedom to present their authentic selves. They highly value the team, colleague support, line manager support, and allyship. And they have few strategies to cope and navigate the work environment. I have a couple of recommendations as well. So these experiences and subtle barriers are really nuanced. The organizational and psychological safety studies don't include the social categories in general. So without including them, they were unable to capture these nuanced experiences. So I recommend the studies to incorporate these social categories into their research, future research. Then allyship seems to be really crucial in constructing a psychologically safe environment. However, it was observable that supportive colleagues have some barriers to transforming into an ally. So future research might explore this further. That's all from me. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and I'm happy to answer if you have any questions or if you have any feedback. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Vani. That was so interesting. Yeah. Rain, would you like to, sorry, I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm going to do a Nikita. He loves doing this. Rain, do you have any reflections or anything particular that you really enjoyed about this presentation, or anything that you can relate to? Or yeah, if possible, if you had any thoughts.
Yes, I'm sorry. I didn't know if you said my name or not.
No,
but
sorry.
yeah, I did. I enjoyed it a lot. And I definitely can relate. I don't know if you guys can hear me, but I definitely can relate in so many ways, especially when she was speaking about just having to be someone that you're not, just so that you can blend in like the workplace and just in general. I think it was a very good, very, very good topic.
Thank you. Thanks, Rain. Thank you very much.
Excellent, thank you. Let me just open up the chat a bit bigger. So there's a question in the chat saying, do you think appearances also play a role with professionalism and workplace social constructs? Culture definitely plays a huge role, and I wonder if physical appearance also plays a role. Any thoughts on that?
So appearances, it is, I don't know whether it's a conscious effort or unconscious. We actually try to blend in. I can relate to that. Appearances play a role, I believe, whether we like or not. We want to be accepted and blend in. So I believe the appearances play a role. Whether it's right or not is a different question. But in reality, whether we do that or not is, I own up and say yes, I do. It shouldn't, as you said, Rain. It shouldn't. But in reality, whether it happens, I believe. At least I do that. Not consciously, but yeah. Thank you.
Brianna, would you like to come on and tell us a little bit more about this perception of tattoos?
Sure, I'm outside, so I kept myself muted just in case, the wind started blowing or something. It's really nice where I'm at. So, but yeah, I did a study with two, I'm actually finishing up grad school, and two of my colleagues and I conducted some research and made surveys and collected data on perceptions of tattoos in military veterans versus non-veterans, and how that plays a role with how their perceived mental health is based on their appearance. And it was interesting because tattoos are perceived as such, this tough thing, or tattoos are perceived, depending on the profession, as like a taboo thing to be seen in the workplace. And that's where my fascination with like how appearance and culture plays a role in professionalism, and how that affects the workplace. Because money makes the world go round, and if you can't make money to support yourself, it kind of falls back onto everything else in your life. So this topic's just really fascinating to me.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that insight and overview, Brianna. Awesome. Any other reflections, anything that struck home with them, or any questions for Vani? Great. And same question for you as well, Vani. Are you happy for people to reach out to you on LinkedIn if they want to ask anything at a later date or check in on anything?
Definitely. Thank you. I'll share my LinkedIn handle as well, but that would be great. Thank you, Lais. Yeah.